What is your initial read on the potential impact of adding, 324 more types of guns to this list?
Well, I think when we went back, through this process of the comprehensive legislation that was Bill C-21 that was signed into law about a year ago, there was a recognition even at that time that there were a number of weapons that looked a lot like the original OIC. So I think groups on all sides of this debate should have anticipated that there would be more coming. And the government, in fact, did describe a process where they would convene experts, look at the ones that were tabled. Originally, I think it was 400 and some odd under G46, I believe, when it was still in before committee. And I think now they've just come to make some conclusions about that, which is good. I mean, the fact that there were loopholes or exceptions or missed opportunities, I think it was important to close that off.
Yeah, is the idea really to, I guess, address the fact that, from what I had read, there was concern that even though there's a large amount of these guns on the list, that you could easily just kind of duplicate what you were able to do with those with something similar.
Yes, and I think the government had to show that it was serious about it. Wasn't just about the 1,500, but it's about a category of guns that are seen as overspec for hunters and others that might have legitimate sport use, that these are coming out of military-informed designs, whatever phrase you want to use, assault-style weapons or whatever, and therefore there was inconsistency that needed to be addressed. So it sounds now like they have a process, which they also intimated at the time last year, that they would convene a committee, and that they're also going to be more proactive in terms of dealing with the gun manufacturers as they bring these guns to market, so they don't wait for a problem to happen before there's so many of them on the streets. So I think there's progress. I mean, I guess my general comment is it's been a year since Bill C-21, so it would have been nice to see this in place for everybody's sake, because I think even if you're a gun owner, I'm sure you want to know what's legitimate and what isn't. And so having consistency in practice and in regulation, I think will be good for everyone in the long run.
The public safety minister also got a question there from somebody about whether there are more essentially coming, and he implied that there would be another consultation, and at the end of that consultation next year, additional weapons added to that list. Like, what is your sense of how important that will be from your perspective?
Well, again, I think this is, it's not only that list, but also how we don't get another list. I think what we'll be listening, and, we're digesting this as the public is, as we're learning of this announcement. And to me, it's a follow through on what the intention was. The intention was to take out weapons that are overspec'd for legitimate use. That was the flavor of the discussion, and it was a fulsome and robust discussion, from a number of different parties. So, we came to, there were a conclusion, legislation. Now we need the regulation and definition. And to me, this is just closing the chapter and getting that through so that everybody understands what the rules of the game are going to be moving forward.
Just before I let you go, Mr. Price, I mean, I remember speaking to you over the years, but I indicated in the introduction what happened to your daughter. For people watching who aren't familiar, why has this issue become so important for you? And if I could share with them, like, you were one of the driving forces behind C-21, you and some of your, some other people who were affected by what happened in the Danforth, and the people in Montreal, like, they really pushed the government in many ways to do a lot of what they did. Why has this been so important to you?
Well, I think you saw in the conference that, to me, the most powerful part was the naming of the names and the reminder of what's at stake. I mean, on the one hand, we're talking about legislation and technical issues related to guns. On the other hand, the consequence of misuse and the risk associated with the guns being in the wrong hand is just so high and permanent. And I think what we tried to do as a group of Danforth families in joining these other families that were affected is to speak from our experience to help inform the decisions that were made. And so we would just encourage the government to, as Natalie said, to follow through on what it committed in its legislation, get regulations in place, get a number of these items moving forward. The minister, I think briefly before we spoke, was talking about, magazines. And so there's still some other work to do. And I'm anxious to see that happen. So we'll see the effect of that, very emotional journey that we went on to go through and be part of that Bill C-21 getting tabled and passed. Thank you for the chance to speak to you again, Vassy. I appreciate it.
I was just going to say I thank you so much for making the time to speak with us. I appreciate it. Thanks, Mr. Price.